Hey, in this video we're going to be making a big, slightly older style house. So as always I started with a wireframe on the floor for some shapes that I wanted to include in this build, and I separated them by colour because I thought that was really clear. But as I started building and I wanted 3 block intervals between pillars, I changed that, and I think it's really important to change your plans as you go along, because otherwise you get stuck in your initial idea and you can't grow from that. But I started with some brick. This is a wooden house technically, but I think that you do need a stone, I suppose. You don't have to use bricks or anything because that's really expensive, especially in survival mode. But I thought it worked really well with the new mangrove wood, which I used to create a little bit of detail underneath the pillars and the structural support. I tried out a couple of different shapes, but eventually decided on a nice archway. And I think that the color, it goes really well with bricks because it's like a similar hue, but it's like a bit darker, and it looks really nice. And then behind that I tried out some jungle wood. I think that it looks really good with bricks usually, so I tried out both the stripped logs and the planks. The planks didn't look so good, so I decided to go with the stripped logs. Then to add in another wood, because this build is really wood heavy, decided to put in some birch wood as like framing structural support for the upper layer. Honestly, birch is so good, and it adds a bit of like a contrast to the bottom layer because it is it's so bright, so it makes you look up. When the top of a build is brighter than the bottom half, it makes you want to look up, which is just a cool little trick. But I think that it works really well. It contrasts quite well. It's kind of similar to the jungle wood, but I'll put it in jungle wood behind it later to like show the difference. And then I started to put in a roof in, and I wanted to try out some different roof shapes this time, so I tried to make like a slanted roof, but it was like curved inwards, which is something that I've seen a lot lately, and I thought it's a really cool shape, so I decided to try it out. And then for the upper story I experimented with some different like panel shapes, because I split this build up into panels, which I think is the easiest thing to do when you're trying a new style, because then you can really focus on the smaller bits that all work together and try out all the different options for each small area, and then it will all come together really nicely rather than being intimidated by some massive surface. And then obviously some more details with the bricks and mangrove. I think that this just adds, I think that's like 3 layers of depth. I love depth. I think it's an amazing tool to use to make your builds just look that much more detailed. And then for a bit of contrast, we have some stone for the bottom layer of the second sort of area of the building. I just think that it's kind of necessary to put in like foundational layers, which is why I use stone at the bottom of a lot of my builds. Here I tried to do a similar thing with the oak logs to the birch logs on the other section, but it wasn't really working, so I just made it sort of structural, and I added in I sort of like kept changing how I wanted to do the archways in each section of the build, but they all ended up being archways, which sort of carries out that consistency throughout the build without it all being the same. So like a key feature of this build is the sort of archways that frame each panel, but none of them are really the same, and I think that it worked really well. And then we reintroduced the birch wood as the paneling block for the second part of the building, which sort of brings in the birch from the left hand side of the building to the right, and it just makes it look a little bit more consistent and like there was a clear color palette for it. I think that it looks pretty good. And then I sort of mimicked the same roof style because I think that it looks good. It takes a little bit of trial and error to get it to sit like at the right height and also be the exact right shape to look good, but I think in the end it turned out really well. I also trimmed it with dark oak and then made the rest of the roof out of spruce, just because I think that a trimming really makes a roof pop, and I think that it just looks so much better like that. There was a lot of roof area in this build, but I didn't add in any roof windows just because I didn't think it suited the style. I think that it's fine with a massive area of the roof. If it was any more, I might make windows, but I just didn't think it worked with this. And then we added in some glass, tried out some different colors. I usually go with light grey, white, or just plain regular glass panes, but I tried out orange. I didn't think it looked too good. I think it clashed too much with the jungle, so we went with white. And then just putting in some extra gardening, greenery stuff. I think that this build really needed like a pruned look, like it's not an overgrown house. I think that it needed to look very nicely pruned. So we put in some rose bushes and just some planter boxes with some not overflowing leaves. And just a little path just to draw your eye from the start of the frame when you're looking at it to the front door of the build. Just another little detail to add in. I also tried adding in some mossy cobblestone, which is something that I don't usually do, but I think that it looked really well in this context. And then I just built out the surrounding area with some grass just to make it look a little bit elevated and grounded in its environment. The thing that I do a lot is I build the facade first and then I fill in like all the backs of the builds, which is maybe a bad thing, but I just usually do it off camera. But I wanted to highlight that like I don't build the entire build in one go. I do like a little bit of the build and then a little bit of the scenery and then a little bit of the build, and I finish it off like that. I think that it's important to have breaks in each thing, otherwise you'll just get like creatively burnt out. And then I just added in some little bushes, some little azalea bushes. I tried to put them in like a little grid, but it didn't look very good. So I decided to make that a little bit wilder because it's not in specific garden beds, and just for some extra greenery. And I think it looked pretty good. So here's the final build. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And I'll see you very soon for another video.